Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video we're going to make the coffee break blanket, and this is a really simple stitch. It is beginner friendly, and there's just a little bit of a trick that I'm going to show you how to work it so that you get a great result no matter your skill level. Now I have designed this to work with chunky yarn, and your yarn count will be in your pattern. And if you don't have the pattern, you don't need the pattern to make this, but I have a simple formula to calculate how much yarn you're going to need based on the yarn that you're using, and I will link that in the description. So I have it written on a blog post, and I also have a video tutorial if you want me to walk you through it and whatnot. Okay, so let's get started. I am going to demonstrate how to make it with a solid color yarn because it's just easier to see what you're doing with solid versus the variegated yarn. So this one here, this kind of pink raspberry sauce looking, this is the Karma yarn from Premier. I have a review on this on my channel. The yellow one you see in the thumbnail is Knit Pal. It's on Amazon, and that is the ombre chunky, and that's more of a squishy, kind of a soft squishy yarn. It doesn't drape as nicely as something like this, but for the person that I made it for, it's perfect. All right, so let's get started. All right, so this blanket is made with a variation of the linked crochet stitch, which is one of my favorites. I have so many patterns on my channel with variations of the linked single crochet. Excuse me. And I'm going to do the tutorial with a solid color yarn just to make sure that you can see what I'm doing with my hook. Sometimes with the variegated it can be a little tricky. So I'm going to have you use stitch markers at the ends. It's simple. This is beginner friendly, but just for hook placement, let's do a stitch marker for each end. So with the link stitches, because you're bringing one stitch, you're linking it to the next stitch, it can throw off your stitch count. That's why we're going to use the stitch markers. So to begin, and this is for the chunky version of the blanket, the tutorial, you need a really loose starting chain, otherwise it's going to buckle, and I'm going to show you how to make it loose, not just keeping your hand loose but actually making those stitches long. So I'm going to do let's do 16 stitches. There's no stitch count, just whatever you want. Consider this all single crochet. So I'm going to go in, pull up my chain, pull it up, like don't just make a chain, pull it up, then work the next stitch. Pull up, you see I'm pulling the yarn up before I stitch. You can do foundation single crochet, but I know a lot of makers find those challenging, so I'm going to keep it easy by making these loose starting stitches. So 1 and 2. Again, I've pulled up this stitch. 3, pull, 4, pull, 5, pull up nice and loose, 6, 7, pull up, 8, pull up, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, pull up, 15, pull up, 16, pull up. And then also, and you may have to play around, I would recommend doing a test swatch because you want to see how big of a hook you're going to need for the yarn that you've chosen. I have an 8mm hook for this. Now, from here, I'm going to add 2 stitches, 1 and 2. These are turning stitches, so I'm not pulling them quite as loose. Then yarn over, skip those 2 you just made, go into that first stitch, pull up a loop. Now, I'm going to stitch mark. Here's the one, here's the second one. Second one is my kind of my end turn chain. I want to mark that to make sure that I see it when I'm coming back. And mark it as if that's where your hook is going to go. You see, it's the 2 V's on the marker. Lock it, your locking stitch markers. Okay, back to where we were. So I've yarned over, gone into the first loop, yarn over again, don't do anything else, go into the next stitch, pull up another loop, keeping it loose, yarn over, pull through all 5. Now you see we have the stitch marker because the first stitch and the second stitch were joined into one, which is this stitch. Turn chain and then the marked chain, first chain of the chain 2. It'll make sense as you're working this. Now don't chain or anything, just yarn over, go into the last stitch you went into, pull up a loop. It's that same stitch that was just worked there. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, thus linking the 2 together with this little bit of a cluster. 5 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through. Don't chain, yarn over. Go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over before going into the next loop. Keeping it loose. Pull through, yarn over, back into the same stitch before going into the next stitch. Pull through all 5. And you're starting to make some clusters. Let's do a couple more. Yarn over, back into the same stitch, pull up, then yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull up, keep things loose, pull through, yarn over, same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go into the next loop, 5 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through all. All right, so just keep this up till you get to the end of the row. All right, so I finished my row. Should look like this. And I'm going to need my second stitch marker. Chain 2. I'm going to keep my eye right here. I want my stitch marker to go into the first stitch of the chain. There's 1, there's 2, right? Into the base, both loops on hook, or both loops on the marker. Oops, it looks like I split my yarn. There we go. See, I've got my V on there. Close it up and start this again. Go in, yarn over, go into the first stitch, yarn over into the second stitch, pull through. Okay, so this is row 2. This will be your repeat. Gosh, this chunky yarn, it gets eaten up so quickly, especially with these thicker stitches. Okay, yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over before going into the next stitch like we have been. Pull up. Right, so I'm coming to the end. And this is where we have to consider that we are essentially losing a stitch when we make the first stitch of the row. So it's made up on the end here. Okay, so let's look. This is the last visible stitch up here, the top, that first stitch we went into when starting this. Yarn over, go in there. All right, so now we're going to utilize the marked stitch to add in the last stitch of the row. So go back like you have been into the last stitch. Now look, make sure you're in that stitch, and yarn over and go into this marked stitch down here. So let's see, where is it? There are the loops. Got both loops on hook, pull up, nice and high, pull through, take out your marker. Chain 2, 1, 2, mark that first of the 2 chains, so we'll work into that coming back, and then repeat row 2 again. Go into the first stitch, pull up a loop, then next stitch, pull up a loop, and so on. Really simple. And then you'll see when you come down here to finish this stitch, your 2 loops on the the stitch on the stitch marker, that is where you'll put your hook in. Come in right here. See, it's right where the marker is, and finish your round. So your last stitch, let me finish this row, we'll do it together, just one more. Get you comfortable with it. All right, so I'm coming to the end. Start this stitch, whoops. Okay, find that last top stitch, which is here, or the top of the last stitch of the row. 5 loops on hook, and then we've got to add another one in there. So we yarn over, go into that stitch again, yarn over, then find where this marker is, and the 2 loops it's holding, go down in there, pull up the loop, chain 1, chain 2, move my stitch marker and put it back into this one here, the first chain 2, the first of the chain 2s. There we go, at the base. Okay, so the base stitch and then the turn chain is how I like to think of that chain 2. And then you just keep working it until it is the size that you want. And you want to do a really simple border on this. I mean, you could do an elaborate one, but with the chunky blanket, I don't know how elaborate of a border you want to do. But your single crochet borders are going to pull this out nicely. And then you see with our really loose chain base, there's no pulling. Everything's just laying nice and smooth. It's not, narrow because it was too tight down there. But this starts to make almost like a braided look. Really pretty, and pretty with the thicker yarns. Did you know I designed project trackers? large print and regular print for small, medium, and large size projects. The link is in the description to get your own, or you can try it for free. There's a download on my website, link in description. So I've made this the width that I want. This is such an unusual size, I feel like, for a blanket, but it's a custom size request. So it's a very much kind of a slim rectangle. It's for a little youngster that likes to hold it a certain way. For chunky blankets especially, my personal taste is I don't like much of a border. This stitch I feel does need a little bit of a border just to keep the edges clean. My other chunky pattern, maybe I have two, but I don't have borders on them. But this one I feel, because of how that last stitches worked, it's still pretty clean and straight, but I feel like it needs that single crochet all the way around, working the 3 stitches in the corners as you come around, right? So no stitch count. I'm just going to single crochet around. Now your preference, if you like something different, of course it's your blanket, you do what you like, but I'm going to start working a single crochet around, and of course you will see how it looks in the thumbnail. So let's see, I ended here, so this is my last stitch. So I'm going to chain 1 and then do the quarter turn and start working across the shorter edge. My wrist is still, it's feeling better, but it's still a little weird. If you've been following me, I have a wrist injury. Now, what I would say is make sure that you get 2 loops on the hook for a secure stitch with your edge, but not more than that. So I'm going to do 1 in that kind of finishing cluster, and then my second one will be in the more open space below it. And that should kind of be the right amount of stitches per row. Okay, so let's do another one. Come back to the side, find where that hook should go. Since it's kind of twisted together, you'll have to sort of fish around, get in there, and keep them loose so that it's not buckling. Right, and I'm going to go in here. It's kind of a little bit of a space. Go back and look, find where I want my stitch. Now looks a little loose. And then of course you can adjust as you go. If it seems like it's getting buckling, like a little bit too tight or flaring, you can go back and adjust. I'm just going to slowly do a baseline of single crochet around, see how it looks, see if I want to finish maybe with a yarn over slip stitch, something like that. Let me work this round and then I'll come back and we'll see what some other options are to and gild the lily. But see how that makes it look a little bit more clean. Now here I want to call your attention when you're to the bottom. So this is that starting chain row we did. Now remember, I made really long stitches, right? So you're going to have these big openings in between. So this will not be a 1-for-1 stitch placement. And some of these you're going to want to work 2 stitches so that you do not have the buckling. So not every stitch will need 2 in it, but I would say kind of watch how it is when you're going along. This is going to vary based on the yarn you use, because these bulkier yarns, they're really tricky, and also they magnify everything you do. So for me so far, working, I don't know, I've done about 30 stitches. I would say every 8th, 9th stitch I've put 2 stitches in one, just so that there's no pulling or buckling going on, because that will ruin the effect. The blanket will not lay flat. So here you see I'm doing my 2 crochet. Make sure you get 2 loops on the hook so that it's nice and secure. I'm just working. There's 3, 4. I'm just going to be checking as I go. Make sure it's still laying flat. No bunching, buckling, none of that. 5. So now it's starting to feel like I'm really extending and reaching my hook into that next stitch. Here's 6, so I'm going to put another one in here. So just kind of feel it around as you go. On at least on this side, your other side should be just fine. All right, so I finished my single crochet around. This is just really subtle. So now I'm going to do a yarn over, if I can get my yarn, a yarn over slip stitch. Yarn went under the chair. Okay, so this is, I did my 3 in the corner, and now I'm back to the very first stitch I made, which was right here. So this was my finished row. I chained 1, did a quarter turn, and now here I am. So I'm going to slip into here, and then same stitch, yarn over, go in, pull up, and then you want to keep the, oh, I'm twisted right there. I don't want that. Yarn over, pull up. So the yarn over slip stitch can get tight if you don't keep your tension a little bit loose. So pull up and slip. Yarn over, go in, pull up and slip. That gives just a little more of a decorative edge instead of just a regular slip stitch. You've got that extra bit of yarn. You see how it's kind of giving more of an edge, kind of lifting it just a little bit to frame the blanket. So that's how I'm working this. And if you want to, if you're doing a larger blanket, since this is a smaller size, I just need a delicate little edge of 1 row of single crochet. If you're doing a larger size, you might want a second round or do half double crochet as your edge instead of single. I don't know that I would do a double crochet. You can try it, see how it looks in proportion to your blanket, and of course the yarn you're using is going to dictate some of this. All right, so that's how I make the coffee break blanket. Let me know what color you're making in the comments if you're making it. I always love to know what colors people are working with. And thanks for watching.